We continue with Mid-American Conference predictions as we now will talk about the Northern Illinois Huskies. And this could be one of the more interesting teams out of the MAC in 2024 as they were a team that saw their ups and downs last year. They beat a Power 4 side in Boston College, yet lost to an FCS school and saw some pretty solid play during Mid-American Conference play. We're right there near the top of the conference, didn't compete for a conference title, but that's exactly what they're expecting to do here in 2024. With some pieces overturning, is Northern Illinois going to be good enough to sit atop the MAC and contend for a conference title? You're about to find out what I think here in this video. What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. Welcome to my channel and welcome to prediction season. And it's where I predict all 134 FBS level college football teams. Guys, we almost have 100 of these videos done, which means we just have around 35 or so to go. We have under 40 to go here at this point. And if you're a fan of a Power 4 team, you already have a video on my channel. Go ahead, watch that video after you watch this one. And I want to thank you for watching this video because it helps support my channel in more ways than you can even imagine. And look, you can support the channel in many, many more ways. How? Well, subscribing and ringing the bell, especially if you're as big of a college football nerd as me. You're going to want to have to hear what I have to say during the season, right? That made no sense, but you're definitely going to want to hear my thoughts during the season. You got to subscribe, interact with the channel in any way you can. Like, comment, share. Really anything you do helps really anything you do to interact with the channel helps to support it, and it does mean a lot to me. We'll talk about one of the more inconsistent teams here as it feels like Northern Illinois has a good season and then has a bad season. We are now entering 2024 for the Huskies and Thomas Hammock's group. We'll go through the team's offense, the team's defense, and at the end of the video, we'll go through the schedule to give it a game-by-game preview and prediction. But before we do that, a couple things I got to tell you about. Right over here will be the stats team put up either offensively or defensively last season. And of course, for your viewing pleasure, right down there below the team's logo, I have put the team's coaching staff. Let's talk about Thomas Hammock's group first up. The offense as per usual. And this offense had some pretty good things going for it last year, especially that run game. And I mean, you want to go ahead and take a look there at that running back room. We'll talk about it in a minute. Pretty much everyone comes back. We'll tell you the names that come back in a minute, but the run game was really good last year. It probably will be again this upcoming season. The pass game saw some inconsistencies, and its primary starter from last season is gone off to the NFL. I believe he may even be off to the UFL, the new XFL, USFL, United Spring League that just wrapped up back in June. I believe he got drafted into that one there as well. Nonetheless, I think he's going to be playing some sort of professional football in 2024. That is Rocky Lombardi, a former Michigan State Spartan, had 2,272 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions last season. Had 7 rushing touchdowns last year as well. Only 1.8 yards per carry. Didn't necessarily run unless he had to, but still, nonetheless, 7 rushing touchdowns is nothing to blink an eye at all. So for Rocky Lombardi, he's onto the professional scene now. You'll no longer see him here. You'll see him playing on Sundays or, again, in the UFL. So with the Huskies coming back in this quarterback room, you do have Josh Holst, who's probably going to end up being the third string quarterback here because Ethan Hampton is coming back. Now, only had 147 yards last year through 33 passes, completed 19 of them, only 4.5 yards per completion, 2 touchdowns, and 2 picks. But Ethan Hampton is projected to be that starting quarterback here. You go back and look at what he did in 2022, 798 yards, 7 touchdowns, and 6 picks. Yes, there is some development that needs to be made, but overall, he probably could have a pretty similar stat line to what Rocky Lombardi has, if not better. You want that touchdown number up. You want that interception number to come back. And overall, you're just looking for more consistency in this pass game for Northern Illinois this season. You also are bringing Jalen Macon, who is a transfer from the portal, I believe over from Arkansas Pines Bluff, that could push for that starting role, but I think he'll play second fiddle to what Ethan Hampton is going to do this season. Not to say he's less talented or anything like that. I just think Hampton's going to end up being that starter. As I mentioned a little bit ago when I was talking about how this offense was last year, they had a very, very good run game last season. That's not going to change here in 2024. It's still going to be really good because everyone comes back. You have a near 1,300-yard rusher and Ontario Brown back, 1,296 yards, 10 touchdowns on 212 carries, and for all you math nerds, that's over 6 yards per carry. Gavin Williams, Justin Lynch will also be coming back, Brock Lampy, Jalen Poe. You get everyone back in this running back and fullback room there as well, as Lampy is more of a fullback type player. But nonetheless, 1,300-yard rusher coming back. Gavin Williams was darn near 500. Lynch and some of these other pieces can provide some good depth in this position as well. But led by Brandon Williams, should be one of the better rush offenses here in the MAC in 2024. Now, in the wide receiver room, you are going to be losing some pretty key pieces here. And both of the pieces obviously are gone due to graduation. Sorry, I had to fix a spelling there. It still is pronounced the same way though. Casper Rutkowitz, and hopefully I'm saying that last name right. If not, feel free to correct me. But he was a very important part to what this wide receiver room did last season. 319 yards and 2 touchdowns on 21 catches last season. You also are losing Davis Patterson. By the way, Rutkowitz was the third leading receiver on this team. Patterson, the fourth leading receiver, 197 yards, 16 catches, no touchdowns for him last season. He will not have an opportunity to get in the end zone in 2024. Both those guys have run out of eligibility and since graduating with no notable losses out of the tight end room. Yes, you do lose two very pretty important pieces of that wide receiver room, honestly, from last season. You get pretty much every major contributor back. Trayvon Rudolph is back, 51 catches. That was a team high, more than doubled anyone else on the team. 531 yards, 2 touchdowns last season. That's a really big get back for this team. You also are getting Dane Partridge back, Kyle Thomas, Jalen Johnson, Keyshawn Pipkin, as well as some guys from the transfer portal. Kenji Lewis is the big name that comes in here from the transfer portal. He is following his quarterback, Jalen Macon, over from Arkansas Pines Bluff. Again, Macon could prove to be that starter, and then you automatically have some quarterback to wide receiver connection there. I don't think Macon, again, is going to be the starter. He, at very least, is going to get some playing time if he isn't the starter. Again, Hampton probably will be that starter just because he's been with this program and everything like that. But Kenji Lewis coming in, especially when Jalen Macon is at the helm, I guarantee you're going to see him play some quarterback for this team this season. You got that chemistry there. Kenji Lewis will play big minutes in the wide receiver room, and Andrew McElroy is in through the portal as well. He's over from Minnesota St. Thomas. All right, you want to go ahead and take a look at the offense, or no, I should say, let's move on to the to the tight end room. Again, no notable losses there. I was going to move on to the offensive line. Skip over my tight ends. I'm so sorry. Grayson Barnes, second leading receiver last year, had 5 receiving touchdowns. That led the team. He's back with 422 yards from last season. You also do get Tristan Tewis, and hopefully, again, saying that last name right. Chris Carter back as well, and Jake Applegate is a addition from the portal. He comes over from UNL. That's the University of Nebraska. Lincoln, a former Cornhusker, could play some pretty big minutes here in the tight end room for the Huskies this season. Gone off the offensive line is Nolan Potter. You'll see him playing on Sundays. And Pete Nigra is gone as well. He leaves through the transfer portal. So all the guys coming back read as follows: Evan Buss, John Champ, JJ Lippy, Evan Malcor, Drew Hoth, Logan, I'm going to butcher this last name, so I apologize sincerely, Schernitz, again, hopefully saying that right, and Matt Schooley. They all are back to this offensive line. Combination of those, 7 guys there? Yeah, 7 guys will be your starting 5 on the offensive line. And look, what are you expecting from this offense? Well, you know you're going to get a really, really good run game because you have all that returning production back here. You know the offensive line is going to be pretty solid, especially if it can fill those pieces in. It could potentially take a little bit of a step back, but hey, they allowed the run game to be as good as it was last year. They only allowed 16 sacks last season. You're just looking for some consistent quarterback play, and whether that's Ethan Hampton or the Pines Bluff transfer in Jalen Macon, one of those 2 guys I think are going to emerge here for this team. Again, I expect Hampton to sort of be that day 1 starter, but who knows, Jalen Macon could play some starting minutes. Those 2 guys there are the 2 quarterbacks I think you're going to see get the most playing time for the Huskies this season. Now we got to talk about the Husky defense in 2024, and it was a really, really good defense, as you see here last season. It only allowed 320 yards per game, barely, in fact, actually just under that, if I may correct that. 21 points per game last season, and overall, just really a pretty solid offense, or not solid offense, a solid defense last season. Yards per game, one of the better marks, not only in the MAC, but in the entire country. And they got some guys that are going to go pro here because they had some really good defensive players last year that they do lose. We'll talk about a couple of them here off the defensive line. James Esther is the big one. He has gone off to the NFL, 45 tackles, 4 sacks last season. And for as good as this defense was, it didn't force a whole ton of sacks. Now, they did have a pretty solid number. They allowed 23 sacks last year. James Esther led the way in that again with 4 of them. So you lose that production. You also are losing George Gums Jr., who is off through the transfer portal, 34 tackles and 3.5 sacks, which was tied for second on the team last season. So who do you have coming back in the defensive line room? Well, Rasheem Thomas is going to be coming back. Another really big part here of this defensive line. You're going to be getting him back, and he is going to be a pretty important piece here to this defensive front this season. He was so big a piece of the defensive line that he actually led the team in tackles. Now, you could, I don't know why my slide changed back on me. I'll fix that here. Sorry about that. You could consider him as a linebacker. He is sort of that edge rusher type player, and all edge rushing types are going to be here on the defensive line in this sort of defensive line slot for the Northern Illinois Huskies. So I apologize for that, or I guess not apologize, but I just want to clear that up. But anyway, as I was saying, Rasheem Thomas led the team in tackles last year. 74 tackles, 2 sacks last season, 1 pass defended. He's a really, really good player, and they're really, really fortunate to get him back this season. Devontae O'Malley and Roy Williams were a couple other leaders on the defensive front. O'Malley had 3 sacks. Williams was tied for second on the team with 3.5 sacks last season, and a lot of depth comes back as well. Skylar Gale Howard, Damon Taylor, Cade Haberman, Cam Cromwell, and many other names you could mention returned for the defensive front for the Huskies in 2024. Gone out of the linebacker room is Deron Gilbert. He is now off to the NFL, and what a phenomenal player. He was 52 tackles, 1/2 sack, 1 pass defended. Very impactful linebacker that you'll see now playing on Sundays. You do lose Keyshawn Artis, and even though I don't think he played that big of a role on this defense last season, is a fairly notable loss. A 4-star rated transfer, maybe 3-star. It could have dropped since the last time I looked on 24/7 Sports. So even though, again, he didn't play that big of a role, is a very notable piece. And you do lose Tyler Jackson, your third leading tackler, who had 56 tackles due to graduation. No more eligibility for him. So your linebacker room, who comes back? Well, your second leading tackler is back. Jaden Dolphin had 62 tackles and 3 passes defended, so you'll get him back. Quinn Erweiler, Jake Gassaway, and some other names you could list here as well return to the linebacker room. But I do want to talk about a transfer as well coming in, and that is Christian Furman. I'll tell you where he comes from here in just a little bit. He is actually hailing over from SEMO. That is Southeast Missouri State, I do believe. They definitely could be a state institution. I'm actually going to fact check that because that's going to bother me. Yes, they are a state university. I'm glad I got that right. But he was a very impactful linebacker. I forgot what position we were talking about already. He was a very impactful linebacker during his time there and will be here in Northern Illinois this season. Defensive back room, no notable losses out of the cornerback room, but you do lose a couple really talented safety pieces. Firstly, in Devin Lafayette. Now, finding his stat line here 1 second, but Lafayette last year, very impactful player, 39 tackles, 1/2 sack last season. No pass defended, no picks, was more of a tackling safety, but nonetheless was one of your better defensive players. And you do lose C.J. Brown as well. Now, C.J. Brown only had 11 tackles last year, but did get some solid production when he did play. So when you talk about the defensive back room, again, I said no notable losses, to me at least, out of the cornerback room. So you get pretty much everyone back. Jacob Finley, Javon Bird, Amarian Knighton, Cameron Dabney, and many other names that you could list there as well will be returning for this team in the cornerback position. And then when you take a look at the safety room as well, a couple of these safeties you could consider as corners, but they kind of play a role that a true corner does not play. So that's why I put them in the safety role. Nate Valcarcel, Jordan Hansen, Justin Profit, Muhammad James, Cyrus McGarrell, Ty Miles, and Trey Porter, among, again, some other names that you could list there, come back in this defensive back room. 8 passes defended for profit last season. I talked about Javon Bird a little bit ago. 5 passes defended, led the team with 3 interceptions last year. McGarrell did have 2 picks last season. Valcarcel, however you pronounce that last name, again, I apologize for mispronunciations, also had 3 picks last year. Ton of talent just comes back in the secondary. And kickers are people too, so you have no notable losses. Tom Foley back to do punting, while Cannon Woodhill and Jake Seibert back to be some place kickers for the Huskies in 2024. And overall, even though they lost some pretty solid talent, I'm still looking at this defense to be one of the better ones in the Mid-American Conference, especially with how much returning talent and returning production they do have in that defensive back room. Getting Rasheem Thomas back is a huge get back. I think they'll have a really good defensive line this year. And overall, I just think when you go back to me talking about the offense and this defense, the Huskies are going to have a really, really solid team here in 2024. And it leads me into the Husky football schedule. Any game at home is underlined, while any game on the road is in italics or that slanted text. Any game you see in green is a game that I think the Huskies are going to win pretty easily. Any game in yellow is a close competitive game, but I still see the Huskies being able to win. And any game in red is a loss. We'll start out with the game against Western Illinois to open up the season, FCS level program that I think the Huskies are more talented than. They should be able to get off the ground here and be able to get the win against Western Illinois. Maybe you try out both Ethan Hampton and Tyler Macon. If that quarterback battle still has not figured itself out, it probably will in week 1, because you have to have a quarterback solidified by the time you go on the road in week 2 to play the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Now, I don't think it matters who the starting quarterback is here. You probably need to have one solidified guy, obviously, to give yourself the best shot to win this game. But I don't see Northern Illinois having much luck with Notre Dame this season. They're going to be a very, very, very good team. Riley Leonard comes in through the transfer portal. Yes, they lost a lot of talented pieces through the transfer portal in their own right. Chris Tyree and some other really good pieces in the wide receiver room are gone. You also are losing that running back whose name is escaping my mind right now. So apologies for that. Some good defensive pieces are back. Or I'd say some good defensive pieces are gone, but some really good defensive pieces are back, including one of the best corners in the country in Benjamin Morrison. Again, I already talked about Riley Leonard entering this team through the transfer portal. And I just like Marcus Freeman as the head coach. I think Notre Dame's going to have a good offense. They're going to have a good defense. Northern Illinois won't be able to win that one. Probably didn't need that long of an explanation to tell you why Notre Dame's going to beat Northern Illinois, but you got one regardless. First bye week of the season comes here before they have to play the Buffalo Bulls at home. Now, I'm not a big guy on the Buffalo Bulls this season. I just don't think they're going to be that great of a team. They do lose some really good talent off of last year's team, and they're bringing in some transfers to try to supplement a lot of experienced transfers. And look, maybe Buffalo sees their improvements in some facets, but overall, I'm just not loving this team out of the Mid-American Conference. I think Northern Illinois starts out early conference play with a win there, and well, look at that. I've already spoiled a prediction for you. I don't think this one is hard to see either, and I definitely won't give as long of an explanation as I did for the last one. This is a loss for me against the NC State Wolfpack. Grayson McCall is coming in. Jordan Waters is coming in. You're getting some really good pieces at the wide receiver room back and in through the portal. Defensively, yeah, Peyton Wilson and a couple other guys are gone, but we know the style of defense that Dave Doran's group are going to play. They're going to be a really good, hard-nosed defense, and I don't think Northern Illinois has the talent to be able to get by an NC State team that could contend for an ACC title this season. You do round out non-conference play here with the game against UMass, and I think you're going to be able to win this one fairly easily. UMass does lose some of its more talented pieces through the transfer portal this past cycle, and even though that's a team that I still think could see their trends in the right direction in 2024, I think Northern Illinois is a way much more talented team. They will beat UMass there at home, but the road struggles continue for Northern Illinois. I think you're going to see that that's a theme here in this video, as it feels like it is with as it feels like it has been with a lot of my videos lately. But I think this is a loss right here for the Northern Illinois Huskies on the road against Bowling Green. And look, they have a lot of really good returning talent here. Connor Bazelek is coming back at the quarterback position. You have some really good wide receiver transfers that enter there, most notably in RJ Garcia. Terrion Stewart is back in the running back room, and it's a defense that's going to be loaded with seniors this season. This is the time for Bowling Green to strike and really make their impression felt on the Mid-American Conference, and that to me is a loss for the Huskies. So they go through the first half of the year 3-3, and it doesn't get much easier because you have to go up against what's still going to be one of the better teams in the Mid-American Conference in Toledo, your first game of the second half. Now, you do get them at home, and I think Northern Illinois does have some advantages here when they do play Toledo. DeQuan Finn, gone. Penny Boone, gone. However, they do return some really good pieces in the tight end room and in that wide receiver room as well. Jason Candle comes back as that head coach, and you're losing a ton of talent, most notably Quinion Mitchell, gone off of that defensive side as well. Toledo's still going to be one of the best teams in the Mid-American Conference this year. I don't see them being as good as they were last year, and Northern Illinois could get better than they were last season, not due to transfer portal additions or everything like that, but everyone coming back in the system. The run game is still going to be really, really good, and that's what I think helps beat Toledo here. Even though I think Toledo still going to have a pretty solid defense this year, I think the run game helps Northern Illinois here control the pace of this game. They win a close one at home, and they jump above 500 here, and I think they stay that way. They got to go on the road and play Ball State, and again, Ball State, much like Buffalo, not a team that I am loving out of the Mid-American Conference this season. I think that's going to be a win there for the Northern Illinois Huskies, as Ball State does lose some pretty solid talent. But then you get your second bye week of the year, and then when you come back, it's Maction time, and your first Maction game is on the road against Western Michigan. Now, Western Michigan, probably one of the more tricky teams to try to figure out within the Mid-American Conference. Look, they do still have some really solid talent, including Hayden Wolf, a former Old Dominican Monarch not Old Dominican, Old Dominion. Apologies sincerely. Old Dominion Monarch coming back at quarterback here for this team. Some pretty solid wide receiver weapons do come back. You're getting some really solid defensive transfers coming in here as well. And I think Western Michigan, especially, is going to be pretty competitive at home this season. So I think that's going to be a win for the Western Michigan Broncos, making it a loss for Northern Illinois. But you know what? You're going to come right back home the very next week in action play as well. Again, on that Tuesday, Wednesday weekday. I believe that's a Wednesday game, and you'll beat the Akron Zips. Again, much like Ball State, much like Buffalo, not a team that I really like. Don't see a lot of upside in them. I think that's a win for the Huskies. You got to go on the road to play Miami of Ohio. And look, they're probably going to be the best team in the conference this season. The reigning MAC champions return Brett Gabbert. They have the best 1-2 combination in the linebacker room, Salopek and Ty Wise. They both come back. Ton of weapons everywhere. Miami's going to be a really good team this year, and that's a loss for the Huskies on the road. And this Central Michigan game could end up being a pretty big toss-up here. Overall, I see Central Michigan being a team that is fairly competitive in the Mid-American Conference this year, but I don't see them being more talented than Northern Illinois. Plus, the Huskies have this game at home. A win for NIU leads to a 7-5 record, which in terms of a regular season record is a 1-win improvement from where they were last season. Now, again, this is a team that has seen some inconsistencies. They've seen some really good years and some really bad years on an off and on every other year basis under Thomas Hammock. I think they start to get some consistency this year. They got it with the players returning. They'll get it on the field, and they'll be one of the better teams in the MAC this season. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Remember to play hard but tailgate harder. We'll move on to the Florida Atlantic Owls. Goodbye.